But this last time around has been long enough for man to acquire wings, relativity to be born, Robert Goddard's rockets to fly, and Charles Lindbergh's spirit to soar.
Public Broadcasting, and members of the Planetary Society.
Comet Halley's journey takes but 2 generations of Earth time. But this last time around has been long enough for man to acquire wings, relativity to be born, Robert Goddard's rockets to fly, and Charles Lindbergh's spirit to soar. By the time Jesse Owens crosses the Olympics finish line, Halley has retreated well beyond Neptune. When the comet is at the end of its solar tether and traveling slowest, the sound barrier is broken. With Sputnik, man moves off the planet. First his instruments, then himself, and leaves his footprints on another world. The plains of Mars are seen remotely, and voyages beyond expand that vision. Though it is still far beyond the realm of Saturn, Earth-based telescopes begin the search to find the returning comet. Success. In October 1982, astronomers identified the comet as this tiny smudge on their photographic plates. This is the first evidence that Halley is once again heading back our way. Comet Halley, on its long elliptical voyage, has been beyond our reach into space until now. On its accelerating journey toward the sun, the comet traverses the orbits of nearly all the planets, passing by Jupiter, the asteroid belt, Mars, and our planet Earth. On the last leg of this dash, an international flotilla of spacecraft intercepts Halley, history's first close encounter with a comet. The fascination and excitement behind this encounter in space is that it opens a new window on our universe. Hypothesis, 2,000 years of it, will be replaced by answers. At last, we will have evidence from the comet itself. Comet pictures taken from space. Comet dust gathered in space. 2 identical Soviet Union spacecraft, named Vega 1 and Vega 2, Giotto, the European Space Agency's first interplanetary mission, and from Japan, their first 2 interplanetary missions ever attempted. A test spacecraft called Pioneer, and Planet A, renamed Comet. All 5 of these missions hope to extend the frontiers of space science. From this extraordinary opportunity, we hope to learn something of the origins of our solar system. Perhaps even clues to the origins of life. Edmund Halley himself, an Englishman, astronomer, geophysicist, navigator, inventor, diplomat, even one-time spy. He computed successive orbits of his comet, recognized a pattern, and predicted the comet's return, something quite different than discovering it. In doing so, Edmund Halley cut through centuries of superstition and helped to forge modern predictive science. By the way, preferred pronunciation is Halley, but in England and around the world, linguistic license takes over.
Halley's Comet. Halley's. No, we pronounce it Halley's.
But the way he pronounced his name, we know, was Halley.
It's always been Halley's Comet, as far as I'm concerned.
Halley has a different pronunciation in Russian, Halley.
Fred Whipple of Harvard University, the father of modern comet theory. His life's work has been to conjure up theoretical images of the unseen comet nucleus. It is his idea that the comet looks like a big, dirty snowball.
My own interest, really, to be honest, centers heavily on the question of what does a comet look like? Maybe they're great crevasses, maybe they're great toadstool-looking effects. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't even know whether it's going to be spotted or not. And it's just frustrating to work all the time and not be sure of the visualization of the body I'm talking about. This is frustrating.
Halley's approach toward the sun sets off the chain reaction that first caught the attention of astrologers in China centuries ago. The comet's surface explodes from the heat. Violent eruptions of gas from its nucleus trigger jet blasts, speeding up its journey. The nucleus is the scientific prize of this old and mysterious object. It goes back in time to the beginnings of our solar system. As the comet's ice vaporizes, it forms a coma around the nucleus. It's the coma that has frustrated the attempts of Earth-bound astronomers to observe the nuclei of comets. Rising dust and gas form two tails, millions of miles long. The straight tail, ionized gas, known as plasma, is a sheath of blue light. The curved tail of dust is cast in yellow from the sun's light. The tails do not always follow the comet. They're blown outward by the sun's solar wind. When Halley rounds the sun and moves away, it actually chases its tail.
Now, this material has been frozen since the time that the solar system formed, over 4.5 billion years ago.
Bradford Smith, a planetary scientist at the University of Arizona, is an authority on the solar system.
In general, the comets remain in the outer part of the solar system, occasionally coming into where they can be studied. And our ability to get to a comet and determine its composition, how it's put together, what it's made of, will tell us a great deal about how the solar system formed.
Smith believes a new solar system may be in the early stages of forming around this nearby star, Beta Pictoris. Comets may already be winging in toward the center of this disk. Virtually every observatory in the world will be focusing on Halley as it swings by. Radio telescopes as well as optical. Thousands of astronomers, professionals and amateurs alike, have joined an international Halley watch, planning, coordinating, and sharing their observations of the comet. It'll be under scrutiny day and night around the world, each burst of activity documented. Never before has a single celestial object been the target of such intense examination. Although last time around, the scientific community did try. Jürgen Rahi, co-director of the International Halley Watch at the Remeis Observatory in Bamberg, West Germany.
The problem that occurred in 1910, 1911, and in subsequent years was that the astronomers had too much material at their disposal and not enough manpower or money to evaluate the data.
Too little, too late. This time, the world astronomical community is computer-linked. Its wealth of Halley photos and other valuable data to be organized into high-tech video disc archives for use until Halley next comes around in the year 2061. But interest in the comet is not just among scientists.
Halley's Comet, the most famous of all. It appeared over Hastings in 1066, and that was bad.
The story of Edmund Halley and his comet is being told by planetariums around the world.
Is the Earth going to be hit by Halley's? Because this is what everybody worries about. Is every time Halley's comes back, are we going to get hit by it? Because people used to really worry about this.
Astronomers established long ago that Halley would not hit the Earth. It's said that the man in the street believes the solar system consists of just three things: Mars, the rings of Saturn, and Halley's Comet. At the Adler Planetarium in Chicago, Associate Director James Schweitzer.
We've found many phone calls every day asking about the comet or comet trips. We have found that we've had to offer a trip to Peru to accommodate our members that want to see the comet. Halley's Comet has a mystique about it, unlike any other astronomical subject. It's like an old friend that comes back every 76 years.
Comets trace curving paths through the heavens, which are difficult to predict with precision. The changing gravitational lineup of major planets like Jupiter, Saturn, and Uranus disturb their motion. And the geyser-like jets of dust and gas boiling off the spinning comet act like tiny rockets or spacecraft thrusters, causing the comet to skitter slightly in its orbit. Here at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory in Southern California, comet scientist Donald Yeomans calculated the orbit for the first sighting of Comet Halley in 1982.
Our idea was to use the orbit we had determined and trace the motion backwards in time and compare our predictions with the actual Chinese observations. And it turned out, after some only very minor modifications to our theory, that we could actually predict when the comet should have been at a particular time at each of its returns back to 240 BC. But the Chinese did not observe the comet in 164 BC, and that was always a problem with us because, according to our predictions, they should have.
Why the Chinese missed the comet, no one knows. A record of the missing observation in 164 BC was recently discovered in the British Museum. Fragments of Babylonian tablets correctly fixed the comet's position. Christopher Walker of the British Museum.
It's allowed us to demonstrate that the California calculations of Yeomans have proved correct as opposed to all other previous attempts to calculate the orbit of the comet in antiquity. For the Babylonians, the appearance of the comet and the death and accession of a king are very closely linked. And this idea carries on right through history down to medieval times.
In the spring of 1066 AD, William the Conqueror's gathering army gazed across the English Channel and saw Halley hanging like a sword over England. A few months later, William's army crossed the Channel and defeated the Saxons at the Battle of Hastings. To commemorate this conquest by the Normans, artisans of the town of Bayeux embroidered this long sequence of dramatic scenes, the Bayeux Tapestry. This exact reproduction depicts King Harold's advisors warning of the comet's arrival and impending danger from William's invasion ships. Commoners fearfully point heavenwards. Stylized though it is, the comet's appearance is not that unrealistic when compared to this 1910 telescopic view. The first known pictures of comets were drawn on silk. This detailed comet catalog was found recently in the Han tombs in China, which date from 168 BC. The great Renaissance master, Giotto de Bondone, was so impressed with the comet he sighted in 1301, which was probably Halley, that he portrayed the comet as the Star of Bethlehem in his famous Adoration of the Magi. This fresco helped to inspire the European Space Agency's current mission to Halley, which is named Giotto. "300 years before Christ, Aristotle was a mighty philosopher, but he incorrectly taught that comets were nothing but hot, dry vapors. For 1900 years, the Western world did not challenge this erroneous view.
Comets were thought of as terrestrial signs, the waste products of man's humble existence, exhalations from the Earth that were arising up into the upper atmosphere and were ignited there by Aristotle's fiery principle. And then the medieval church picked up on this and thought that, correctly, that they could use comets to, quite literally, scare the hell out of their parishioners.
A Lutheran bishop described the great comet of 1577 as the thick smoke of human sins, rising every day, every hour, every moment, full of stench and horror before the face of God, and becoming gradually so thick as to form a comet. But the worldview was changing. What was stench and horror to the Lutheran bishop provided key evidence for the brilliant Danish astronomer Tycho Brahe. The astronomer tracked the motion of the same 1577 comet. He also compared sightings from other locations and found that all these observations tracked the comet against virtually the same starry background. From this, Tycho Brahe concluded that the comet was well beyond the moon and a member of the solar system.
And so comets came out of the realm of superstition and into a celestial realm. But then Halley himself pointed out that comets travel in such elongated ellipses that they cross the Earth's path once on the way in, and they cross the Earth's path once on the way out.
In 1682, near this green in Islington, on the outskirts of London, Edmund Halley carefully plotted the course of the comet that would someday carry his name. Halley was a relentlessly curious scientist. What held the moon in orbit around the Earth and bound the planets to the sun? Could the same force steer the comets on their curving paths?
The mathematics were diabolical. There was, in fact, no mathematics that was really quite suitable for proving it.
Like Halley, author and biographer Colin Ronan was a long-time staff member of England's Royal Society.
Halley was a good mathematician, but he couldn't sort it out. Someone said to him, "Go to Cambridge and see that chap Isaac Newton." So he did, and Newton said, "Oh yes, I've done it," but he couldn't find the papers. Nevertheless, he was able to send Halley a proof within a few days. Halley was mathematician enough to know that this was the age-old question of astronomy really solved. So he persuaded Newton to write a book on it.
Newton's Principia is perhaps the single most important scientific book ever written. Newton had drawn up the laws of gravitation.
This was a terrific effort of the intellect. Newton had immense powers of concentration, probably more than anybody going around at the time. Halley paid for the publication himself, edited it, and if it hadn't been for him, we might never have had Newton's Principia.
For over 2 decades, he had used Newton's mathematics to laboriously calculate the orbits of 24 known comets, an immense task in the days before computers. He was convinced that the comet he had seen in 1682 from Islington would return. Halley confidently asked astronomers of the future to watch for it in the year 1758 and entreated them to acknowledge that its return was first predicted by an Englishman. In 1720, Halley was named the second Astronomer Royal at the Royal Observatory in Greenwich. Physicist and Halley authority David Hughes.
Here is a model of the most technologically advanced telescopes of the 1670s. And Edmund Halley used this to measure the distance between astronomical objects, a couple of stars, a star and a comet, you name it. And of course, as you can see, it's a 3-man job. 2 astronomers, one over here, and the other one lying down on this bench. And by peering through these 2 telescopic tubes, you can actually measure the angle between 2 stars, or a star and a comet, to an accuracy of round about 4 seconds of arc.
His career through the years flourished. He determined the distance of the sun from the Earth, captained the first naval expeditions for scientific research. He was first to chart magnetic variations of the oceans and still had time to invent the diving bell.
Now, Halley was very, very much your everyman scientist. You know, Halley was the founder of the Royal Society Club. He was a great drinker, a great eater, and a great talker. And you have there a man who I would just love to have met him, because I'm sure if we all went out with him tonight, we'd have a great time.
Christmas night, 1758, the comet was sighted by a German farmer. Halley had been dead for 16 years. Astronomers paid him their ultimate tribute. They named the comet after him. The last time Comet Halley swept through the solar system was 1910, and the entire world contracted comet fever.
Well, I came in with Halley's Comet in 1835. I expect to go out with Halley's Comet. Now, the Almighty must have said, here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together. They must go out together. It's coming around again. I'd be disappointed if I did not go out with Halley's Comet. Oh, I am looking forward to that.
Mark Twain impersonator Bill McGlynn on the Mississippi River, recounting the humorist's fascination with the comet. On April 26, 1910, Comet Halley passed perihelion, its closest point to the sun. The next day, Mark Twain was dead. Many feared a collision with the comet's nucleus or death from poisonous gases in its tail. This is the University of Chicago's Yerkes Observatory in Williams Bay, Wisconsin. In 1910, the facility was used to study Comet Halley. It was among the first to see evidence of cyanogen gas in the comet's tail.
Well, everybody would have been worried about cyanogen and also worried about the fact that we were going to pass through the tail of the comet.
Yerkes astronomer Kyle Cudworth.
Nobody was quite sure what would happen, and certain people, of course, played it up for all it was worth.
Swindlers bilked the gullible by hawking comet pills and mouth inhalers, which were supposed to protect against the gas in Halley's tail. The fact is, there's more cyanogen gas in average city air than the rare amount in the comet's tail. Even so, fearful citizens gathered in churches and camp meetings to pray for deliverance from the celestial visitor. All the dire predictions did not keep others from celebrating. Advertisers hooked their fortunes to its tail, and Thomas Edison recruited these Ziegfeld Follies stars to help make this animated cartoon. Sir Arthur Porritt, former surgeon to the Queen of England, as a 10-year-old in New Zealand, a witness to Comet Halley.
75 years, a long way to squeeze your memory. But my recollection is that we were kept up a bit late that night. I think I remember it as pictured now. A sort of blob in front and a great tail to it. It was a beautiful night and very visible. As a boy, I remember this very well.
And here is what Comet Halley looked like in 1910 with a 1980s twist. University of Arizona astronomer Steve Larson uses a computer to bring out details of the 1910 comet never seen before.
Here in the image processing lab, we're looking at computerized high-resolution photographs of Comet Halley taken in 1910. And so each one of these pictures is about a day apart. In this case, the direction to the sun is to the left, so the tail goes off to the right, off the frame. And you can see that the configuration of the comet changes.
The space flotilla approaches Halley. The two Soviet Vegas, Japan's Pioneer and Comet spacecraft, and the European Space Agency's Giotto. Highest on the list of scientific priorities, Giotto's close-up pictures of Halley's nucleus, some 3 to 5 miles across. The first look at what scientists believe is material left over from the formation of our solar system. This requires some delicate space navigation to prevent the spacecraft from passing behind the nucleus on its dark side or crashing into it. An international effort called Pathfinder is underway to help target Giotto to within 300 miles of the comet's nucleus. NASA's Deep Space Network here at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory has been modified to track the Soviet Vegas. Jordan Ellis is the technical director of the Pathfinder project at JPL.
Well, the two key pieces of information are the camera pointing information, which is gathered by the Soviet spacecraft as it flies by the comet. That is, where the comet is relative to the Soviet spacecraft. JPL's role is to determine where the Soviet spacecraft is at the time it's flying by the comet. These are the two key pieces of information which are transmitted to the European Space Agency.
48 hours before intercept, The European Space Agency will fire Giotto's thrusters to ensure a grazing encounter with the comet. A miscalculation, and we will have to wait a lifetime for another opportunity, the year 2061, when Halley comes back again. Japan's Comet spacecraft will fly by Halley at a distance of about 120,000 miles. Its instruments will study the effects of the solar wind on the comet and the huge cloud of invisible hydrogen that surrounds its head. The other Japanese craft, Pioneer, will pass far away and monitor the solar wind, the million-mile-per-hour stream of particles that flows out of the sun. It is these charged particles that cause Halley's tail to glow like a neon sign. Professor Kunio Harao of Japan's Institute of Space and Astronautical Science has directed his country's Halley intercept.
Halley's comet, when flying far away, is much like a piece of stone or ice rock. But when it comes near the orbit of Mars or Earth, it rapidly gets dry by the heat of the sun. Hydrogen is separated by the effect of solar ultraviolet rays. Therefore, if we could measure the size of this hydrogen cloud, we would be able to determine how much ice has evaporated from the comet. At a glance, it may not be spectacular. We don't mean to stretch ourselves, but we want to collect the best data to contribute what we can to the study of Halley's comet. You see, that's what our goal is.
Solid motor ignition and liftoff.
There is no special U.S. space mission to intercept Halley. Though the space science community lobbied hard, the funds were never made available. In March 1986, NASA's space shuttle is scheduled to take pictures of Halley from Earth orbit. One of the world's leading comet scientists, Donald Brownlee of the University of Washington.
We have been the world leaders in planetary exploration. At the present time, we've dropped the ball. We're not doing anything for Halley. This loss of a Halley mission for the United States was just a disaster for American space science.
I regret that the United States didn't go to the Halleys.
At a September 1985 news conference, NASA Administrator James Beggs on the U.S. decision not to go to Halley.
Back in the time period that the decision was made not to go, there were probably good reasons for not doing it, good financial reasons, but I think that the money that we would have spent in doing it would probably not have been missed over those years. And we would have, I think, rather enjoyed the Halley's encounter more if there had been an American spacecraft in that armada of spacecraft that are going.
Roald Sagdayev, head of the Soviet Union's Institute for Space Research.
We felt somewhat sorry that NASA didn't fly its own spacecraft at the beginning, but at later stage, when already Giotto and Vega were shaping, I think it would be useless to send a third spacecraft from NASA. Just duplication, unnecessary duplication.
The United States' decision to cancel its Halley space encounter led to the first American interplanetary experiment on a Soviet spacecraft. Aboard the Soviet Vegas are Comet dust detectors designed and built in the United States. They are one of a number of cooperative Halley experiments between Soviet and American scientists, the result of invitations extended by the Russians.
It was not an easy problem because we did not have formal bilateral cooperation. So American scientists were invited on individual basis as co-investigators, or maybe I better would put in a business-like way, as a subcontractors to these groups. And it works.
The American dust detectors on the Vega missions were designed by physicist John Simpson, testifying here before the House Subcommittee on Space Science and Applications.
We benefit from the opportunity to make the first measurements of the mass distribution of dust from the coma of a comet. We can use this, not only is it scientifically important, but we can use the results of this in our design for our U.S. cometary program in the 1990s.
At the University of Chicago, Professor Simpson is the leading expert in the analysis of extraterrestrial particles. The dust his Vega experiment encounters will be hitting at enormous speeds, about 150,000 miles per hour.
It would be like going from Chicago to Grand Rapids, Michigan, I estimate about 1.2 seconds. That's the velocity of the spacecraft. Therefore, these little particles can either penetrate or erode the spacecraft and are a real hazard.
The dust detector is a high-powered experiment built with old-fashioned hardware.
We're not giving away anything. In fact, we're able, like in the Soviet case, to go on a ride that is not within our capabilities for the next 10 years. So this is a tremendous opportunity. They gain, we gain.
There are also West German dust experiments on both Vega and Giotto. Eberhard Gruen of the Max Planck Institute in Heidelberg.
By analyzing this dust, we get information, the chemical composition of the material which was present at the time of the formation of our solar system. And that's very exciting. There's no other place in the solar system where we can get it, except in the comets in the outer solar system there.
So we'll just check the actual items now. Okay.
The European Space Agency's control center in Darmstadt, West Germany, the ground link to Giotto. The dust particles Giotto encounters may be no larger than those in ordinary smoke, but the combined speeds of the spacecraft and the comet impart enormous energy. David Dale, the Giotto project manager.
Now, as the dust hits this front shield, it explodes through it and comes through in a vapor of dust behind it and hits a rear shield, which is made of a material called Kevlar, which is in fact used by the police forces of the world in their bulletproof vests.
Giotto may not survive.
If the spacecraft is destroyed, we could lose the data. So we have to pump the data back to Earth as fast as possible, which means we have to have a high bit rate and we have to have a high gain antenna, which you see situated here.
Each year, 10,000 tons of comet dust enter the Earth's atmosphere. In the United States, U-2 aircraft are used to collect this dust at the edge of the stratosphere. Donald Brownlee of the University of Washington.
The dust particles were collected from the NASA U-2 aircraft at 65 to 70,000 feet. And some of the collection modules were sent to our laboratory here in the University of Washington in Seattle, where in our clean room, we picked the particles off of the collection surface, mounted them on a special device where we wash the oil off of the particles that's used to make them stick to the collector originally. So here we have a particle that's being currently imaged at a magnification of 2000x in the electron microscope. This particular particle is a classic example of the case that we believe comes from comets. We know they're extraterrestrial because of their chemical composition.
We have many, many atoms in our body that were inside of comets. And interplanetary dust of 10 micron size falls at about a rate of about 1 per square meter per day, which means there's undoubtedly comet dust on your head or on your body at any particular time. And you eat comet dust all the time.
With no U.S. mission, Professor Brownlee is one of the American scientists that moved aboard the Vega spacecraft in his pursuit of pristine comet samples.
There's a likelihood that comets contain a large number of interstellar grains, pre-solar interstellar grains that are actually older than the sun and the planets, grains that were falling in to the early forming solar system but never got close enough to the center to be destroyed by heating or by collisions, and were perfectly preserved, trapped in this frigid ice and comets, and preserved for 4.5 billion years in Oort's cloud.
Encircling the solar system is a great swarm of tiny fragments, the Oort cloud, trillions of comet nuclei preserved in space. Jan Oort, Professor Emeritus of the University of Leiden in Holland, the creator of the Oort cloud theory.
It's a very big cloud, extending to some 100,000 times the distance of the Earth to the Sun. And this cloud contains some 100,000 million comets could be easily be 10 times more or 10 times less.
Occasionally, comets are torn out of this celestial deep freeze by the gravitational force of a passing star and begin a slowly accelerating journey toward the inner solar system.
In general, these comets will not pass so close to the Earth that they will hit it. But there's no reason why some of them shouldn't. I mean, it's, they come from arbitrary directions and will sometimes hit the Earth.
Yes, comets are certainly a threat. We have comets in Earth-crossing orbits now. They're continually being resupplied from the Oort cloud.
Paul Weissman, senior research scientist at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory.
Well, back in the 1970s, an object apparently entered the atmosphere over the Grand Tetons and other national parks in the western United States. And appeared as a bright fireball. We don't know what that object was. We suspect it was a fragment of either an asteroid or a comet. There's no way to tell.
Asteroids are cold, dead hunks of rock and metal found between Mars and Jupiter. Comets are different because they contain frozen gases, 100 billion ton snowballs. Left in the wake of comets are tiny bits of debris called shooting stars. Bigger objects, called meteorites, plunge through the atmosphere and hit the ground, sometimes creating huge craters.
In 1908, a large object entered the atmosphere over Tunguska in Siberia, exploded in the atmosphere at about an altitude of 5 to 10 kilometers high, and was massive enough explosion without forming an impact crater, without actually hitting the Earth, to knock down trees for a radius of 40 miles, to throw up large amounts of dust into the atmosphere, to be heard, I believe, in Moscow 3,000 or 4,000 miles away. The explosion suggests at least that the composition of the object was consistent with a cometary type object.
65 million years ago, there was a mass extinction of nearly 90% of all living creatures. A growing number of scientists now believe that this catastrophic event resulted from the impact of an extraterrestrial object, setting forests ablaze and filling the atmosphere with dust clouds that choked off the sun. This scientific scenario suggests that the settling dust carried iridium, a rare metal from outer space, direct evidence that an extraterrestrial object once hit the Earth. Here in the north-central region of Italy, in Gubbio, the iridium evidence was found, unusual amounts of it, embedded in a half-inch thick clay layer that marks the geological boundary of mass extinction. Nobel Prize-winning physicist Luis Alvarez.
Well, this is the rock that started this whole revolution, if I can use that word that other people have used to describe what we started.
Alvarez heads the University of California team that detected the iridium layer in Gubbio.
This white limestone here was deposited just before 65 million years ago in the Cretaceous period. And this red limestone up here is the tertiary limestone that was deposited after the Great Extinction, and this clay in here was the thing responsible for the extinction.
Here at the Lawrence Berkeley Laboratory, members of the Alvarez group look back 500 million years in time. Chemist Frank Asaro is testing for telltale traces of iridium in samples of clay from around the world.
This is the complete gamma ray spectrum. The iridium is toward the left. There, I think that shows up more clearly. And the largest peak that you can see is iridium-192.
An object roughly 6 miles in diameter would produce a blast of about 100 million megatons of dynamite, turning day to night. Dust laced with iridium, blanketing the Earth.
That clay, when it was falling down through the atmosphere, blanked out the sunlight. It was just black as pitch. And this was just too big a stress for the animals at that time to be able to survive.
Dinosaurs, once the largest creatures, were no more. It was the last of other animals, such as these mollusks. This sudden die-out in the geologic record marks the end of the Cretaceous period and the beginning of the Tertiary period, 65 million years ago.
It may have been a Halley's Comet of the geologic past that strayed a little bit too close to Earth and hit, causing dinosaurs to become extinct.
One of the most controversial debates in science today centers around the findings of this man, J.J. Sepkoski, and a fellow paleontologist, David Raup, of the University of Chicago. Do mass extinctions occur on a regular timetable? Extinctions are known to have occurred many times in the past, but Sepkoski's bold theory claims that these extinctions happen periodically, like clockwork, every 26 million years.
That's a radical idea, and the idea that that thing that's driving the clock may be extraterrestrial is also a radical idea. And ideas of that nature are almost certainly going to generate controversy, no matter where they're introduced.
University of California astrophysicist Richard Muller is in search of a red dwarf star he calls Nemesis, the Death Star. He believes it will provide a solution to the question of periodic mass extinctions.
I have a theory, the Nemesis theory, that says the type of object that hit must have been a comet. I hope we'll find the star soon, and then I'll be able to say that the fact that a comet hit is established fact.
Muller claims that Nemesis is a small unseen star that orbits the sun every 26 million years, a dark companion. As this red star passes through the Oort cloud, its gravitation scatters billions of comet nuclei, some of them sent hurtling in toward the sun and Earth.
When Nemesis comes close, it picks up quite a bit of speed, and when it comes very close, it comes and perturbs the orbits of the comets. That would be starting right about now. A period of about 1 million years passes when it affects their orbits, and after that perturbation, the comets come in and enter the inner solar system where the Earth is. The Earth becomes a target. We expect a storm or shower of comets to hit the Earth every 26 to 30 million years, creating havoc on Earth, accounting for the periodic mass extinctions seen by Raup and Sepkoski.
The Jet Propulsion Laboratory's Paul Weissman believes the statistics behind periodic mass extinction are wrong.
Well, if Raup and Sepkoski's statistics are wrong, then the whole problem goes away. If we don't have to explain periodicity, then we no longer need a Death Star out there, because we no longer expect to have periodic cometary showers.
What if Sepkoski's calculations are right and Muller finds Nemesis? Does that mean we have only 13 million years before the next comet catastrophe?
What you do is you put up an umbrella. That is, you don't try to handle the catastrophe. You make sure that none of the comets hit. So you track the comets as they're coming in, you meet them out in space, you very gently push them aside with a thermonuclear explosion, and cause them to just miss the Earth. So these comets would give a spectacular show as they shot by the Earth, but none of them would hit.
In the far past, before life arose, the Earth was bombarded by comets. Scientists recently have come to believe that these comets may have provided chemicals vital to life, much of the water for the oceans, and carbon-based compounds to make life. Astronomer Bradford Smith.
There was a rain of this organic, volatile material on the Earth's surface at a time when we know that life was trying to gain a foothold and establish itself on the Earth. It would be remarkable if there were no connection between the infall of comets and the way that life got started on the Earth.
Scientists believe that complex organic molecules, the stuff of life, may be found inside the frozen ice of comets. At the University of Maryland, biochemist Cyril Panamparuma recreates the primordial soup, the sea of organic chemicals on the primitive Earth, out of which life arose.
Who knows, if you can get a piece of a comet and melt it, we might find a mixture very similar to what the primordial soup we make in our laboratory in our electric discharge experiment.
Using electric discharges to simulate the lightning of the primitive Earth atmosphere, Panamparuma has recreated all 5 bases which are essential to make up nucleic acid.
Adenine, guanine, cytosine, thymine, and uracil. It's one of the most exciting discoveries in this laboratory that in a single experiment, we were able to see all 5 of them.
These 5 bases go to make up DNA, the genetic code.
As a matter of fact, why somebody has blue eyes or red hair depends on the arrangement of these in the genetic system, in the nucleic acid, and these are the basis of all life.
It's virtually certain that you will find many complicated organic molecules in comets. At least some fraction of the volatiles on the Earth came from comets and are still coming from comets. So we know that. You know, whether or not comets contain strong clues to the origin of life, we'll just have to go there and find out.
The Palomar Observatory near San Diego. Here, the United States' largest optical telescope, the 200-inch Hale, searches deep space. At Palomar, October 16, 1982, research scientist Edward Danielson and David Jewett, a graduate student, were the first to find Halley on its return. Edward Danielson.
When we picked it up, it was 1 billion miles from the Earth. That's equivalent to trying to photograph like a ice cube, about 1 centimeter square, in New York from California.
Danielson and Jewett deliberated how to photograph Halley. They were trying to prove they had found the comet by showing its movement through space.
Do we just stick on the comet and let the stars go by, or do we let the stars sit there and let the comet drag out? There's advantages to both. If you let the comet drag out, you see something move. If you let the stars drag, then you're going to look for something that didn't move. And that's harder to find if you're looking for something real faint.
Danielson gambled on the stars and tracked them with a giant telescope. The decision was correct. The comet moved out of the picture.
Just by going back 2 days later and proving that it wasn't there, proved that it was a comet because it had moved.
At the Smithsonian Astrophysical Observatory in Cambridge, Massachusetts, early reports of Halley sightings were received by Brian Marsden, a comet specialist.
We were getting telephone calls and telegrams quite frequently from people who thought they detected Halley's comet. I would respond saying, well, can you back this up and get another observation? I mean, most of these were just single observations. There was not even any indication of motion.
The competition among observatories around the world to find Halley was fierce. But when Marsden received the first evidence of the Palomar sighting by Jewett and Danielson, he knew the race was over.
In the Jewett-Danielson case, had motion over an hour or two, and the fact that they didn't see it on the other time. There was something about it that struck me that this was it.
The Mauna Kea Observatory on top of an extinct volcano, 14,000 feet above sea level, near the center of the island of Hawaii. It's difficult to breathe here. Astronauts trained for their trip to the moon on top of Mauna Kea. It's one of the best spots in the world to see Comet Halley. Here, astronomer Michael Ahern works with a charge-coupled device, an electronic camera that allows astronomers to pick up Halley at great distances.
The most difficult thing in observing comets is deciding when to stop observations because conditions aren't quite good enough and the data you get may be spurious. That is a very common problem because comets are usually observed near the horizon. Conditions have to be extremely good to get good data.
The Kitt Peak Observatory in Arizona found Comet Halley in mid-September 1985, a 250 million miles from Earth. The bright circular shape in the center of the comet is its nucleus. The smaller forms are background stars visible through the comet's coma. The beginnings of a tail are apparent. On this time around, Halley's 30th recorded visit, the viewing is not promising. North of the equator, not as good as south of the equator. The farther north you are, the lower on the horizon Halley hangs. Astronomer Jürgen Rahe, co-director of the International Halley Watch,
It will be one of the weakest appearance for the last 2,000 years. And the reason is that at the time of perihelion passage, at the time when the comet will be closest to the sun, the Earth is on the other side of the sun, and you can't even see the comet.
This enhanced satellite photograph of the United States at night shows where lights are a major factor in Halley's expected poor viewing this time around. Light pollution on the horizon, particularly north of the equator, obscures the comet. At the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, the western end of the International Halley Watch is directed by astronomer Ray Newburn.
You will have little hope of seeing it from the latitude of, say, New York City or farther north. And of course, for each degree south in latitude you go, the comet will be 1 degree higher in the sky. So I think the summary of the advice is go far from any city, pick a night when the moon is not up at the time when you want to observe the comet, get as far south as you can, and take some binoculars along if you have them, particularly 7x50 binoculars, which are fairly common. You'll get perhaps your best view of the comet that way.
Halley first becomes visible at the end of 1985, a faint blur high in the western evening skies. By mid-March 1986, at the time of the spacecraft encounters, Halley will be low in the early morning sky to the southeast. Try to travel as far south as you can. Below the equator is prime viewing. Broadhurst, Clarkson, and Fuller have been making telescopes in London for 200 years. Sales of telescopes and binoculars are booming. Amateurs are advised to purchase binoculars. Telescopes are expensive, and buyers are warned to inspect them carefully before purchasing one. Broadhurst's Dudley Fuller.
Now this one is the one that I would deem to be the rip-off one, because if you take a look down this end, where I've taken the lens off, you'll see just inside there's a tiny little light stop. Here, it's about 1 inch diameter. So instead of buying a telescope that is that big, you're actually only buying one that's that big, about 1 inch instead of 2.5 inches. Now, the reason for this is because the lens that's in it is just a plain single lens. A single lens will give you false color, you get rainbow colors around the moon if you look at it, and a straight line will appear like that. This telescope, entirely different, has got what we call an achromat in here, which is a doublet lens, 2 lenses, and it's excellent value.
Hotline listeners will know that the Giotto spacecraft was launched successfully.
The telephone hotline of England's Halley's Comet Society.
5 years of planning, sweat, and nail-biting anxiety, because everything...
Brian Harper, the founder of Halley's Comet Society, began promoting the comet's return in 1974.
It's a majestic metronome that keeps beating backwards and forwards across the cosmos and bringing with it every time fear, pestilence, disease, hope, happiness, and glory.
Harper hopes the comet's glory will produce generous profits for the Society's commercial sales arm, Halley's Comet Limited.
We have a beautiful silk scarf with Halley actually embroidered on it, wonderful Scotch whiskey, a magnificent champagne called Halley's Comet Champagne with a special label. Every bottle is a collector's item.
You've got the kids' knapsacks to carry their books in, all with this Halley's Comet logo. We have stock certificates, which we audaciously enough are selling shares in the Comet.
Owen Ryan is North America's advance man for Halley's Comet, the founder of General Comet Industries, a marketing company for Halley's Comet products.
And I'm very proud to be in a position to try to create some meaning to that, so that it's not just a, if you will, a heavenly huckster. People are buying a symbol that's an expression, if you will, of their faith in the future, because I think that's what really the comet is.
The story of Comet Halley has captured the imagination of the Japanese. Countrywide excitement stirred by Japan's first interplanetary space flight. Kunio Harao.
When such news is coming in rapidly, it increases the general interest.
A growing number of children, and high school students particularly, are fascinated. It's a wonderful thing.
Physicist David Hughes.
Now with comets, I mean, it's rather like all astronomy. We just stand there and we look in awe at the heavens. I find everything up there absolutely fascinating. I just want to know more. And we're very lucky because there are lots of people in this world that also want to know more and are very happy to allow astronomers like me to have telescopes and Giotto missions and so on, and to indulge our curiosity.
The curiosity that drives man to explore space extends that challenging journey in the spring of 1986. These extraordinary space encounters with Halley offer us all the first close look at one of the oldest objects in our solar system. It's a reach back in time, 4.5 billion years. Halley will be coming back for generations to come. Each visit, the comet boils off 3 feet of its surface, and at that rate, Halley will continue lighting up the skies for another 250,000 years. So don't fail to tell your children of Halley's next visit in 2061. And tell them to tell their children too.
The world-famous Strip in Las Vegas, Nevada, where the desert heat today is a searing 104 degrees. And just off the Strip is the Showboat Hotel, where we are now getting set for today's main event, a battle of middleweights, Milton McCrory and Doug DeWitt. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tim Ryan. Welcome to CBS Sports Sunday. And today, boxing fans will see if bigger is better for former WBC World Welterweight Champion Milton McCrory. The Iceman has jumped 2 weight classes to fight middleweight Doug DeWitt. DeWitt is a strong and seasoned middleweight who is ranked 5th by the WBA, 10th by the WBC, and he has never been knocked out. So it's McCrory against DeWitt, and we're scheduled for 10 rounds. Now, also on our Sunday program, we'll have the latest exploits in the continuing saga of the 156 cyclists who are almost halfway through the grueling 2,500-mile Tour de France. And, of course, throughout the afternoon, we'll keep you up to date on all the latest sports news, including some tennis action from the Swiss Open today, where Stefan Edberg, the #1 seed in that tournament, defeated the finalist Roland Stadler, a Swiss player, 27 years of age, ranked 414 on the computer, a good finish in his home country of Switzerland as he went 5 sets before losing to Edberg. In golf today, in the U.S. Women's Open Golf Championship, after 7 holes, Betsy King is the leader. She is 1 under par. Sally Little is behind her at even, followed by Ayako Okamoto and Amy Alcott. Well, once again this week, the issue of drugs in sports was in the news. And again, it stirred attention and controversy. Only this time, the story centered not upon what drug abuse had caused, rather on means to deal with this widening crisis. Hard on the heels of the recent deaths of 2 athletes, Len Bias and Don Rogers, the NFL last week instituted its plan to combat drug abuse. Commissioner Pete Rozelle called for players to undergo 3 drug tests per year, 1 during the preseason and 2 more at random during the regular season. If an athlete tests positive for drugs, he will then be categorized as either a casual or a frequent user. For casual users, the first offense would mean a player would be allowed to stay on the roster but be under continual supervision for 30 days. The second offense would bring a 30-day suspension at half pay, and a third offense would mean banishment from the NFL with a right of appeal. In the case of frequent users, a first offense means a 30-day suspension at half pay. The second offense calls for a month suspension without pay, and a third offense means lifetime suspension with the right of appeal. As word of the plan filtered out to the players around the league, some voiced strong reaction to Rozelle's plan.
I think it's time that we put aside our egos in the NFL Players Union and step in line in agreement with the commissioner.
He is just usurping the agreement and saying, no, I'm going to just take care of this, and that's the way it is. Well, we got a problem with that.
You're penalizing the innocent, too. You're telling them that they're suspect all the way through. We are not all suspect.
We have to be involved in the bargaining process in order to protect the rights of the players as individuals and citizens.
Players Association President Gene Upshaw feels the commissioner has overstepped his bounds.
He's making a unilateral change within the agreement without negotiating with the players. And if he can do that, he can do anything he wants in the agreement. He can change any article within the agreement that he feels fit to change.
I feel that the bargaining agreement and the Constitution and bylaws gives me the obligation and authority to protect the health and welfare of the players and to preserve the integrity and public confidence in the National Football League.
The NFL Players Association immediately sought a temporary restraining order to block Rozell's program. But on Friday, the league agreed not to implement most provisions of the plan, including the controversial random testing, until this dispute with the Players Union is resolved by means of arbitration. The arbitrator, Richard Kasher, is scheduled to hear the case 10 days from now. Coming up next, we'll see how Bernard Hinault and Greg LeMond staged an invasion of Normandy on bicycles. John Tesh and Phil Liggett will have that story for us when Sports Sunday continues here on CBS.
CBS Sports Sunday is sponsored by Budweiser. Beechwood aged for that clean, crisp taste. This Bud's for you. Century 21 Real Estate Organization. And by U.S. Sprint, where every fiber optic call will sound like you're right next door.
When it comes time to sell your home, consider this. Only one real estate sales organization sells more homes, finds more homes, and delivers more successful transactions every day than anyone else in the world. No one's got the power to move real estate like Century 21.
Forging, fitting up, hand finishing. Exacting standards that say nothing is complete until it's right. One beer is brewed with these same values. Budweiser. The most expensive ingredients. Exclusive Beechwood aging for a clean, crisp taste. Because this Bud's for you.
The glorious day of Canadian Alex Stita making history in the yellow jersey. Hours later, pain and defeat at the hands of the Tour de France. The single-minded ambition of American Greg LeMond. The fury of the same man, picked to win a race that has begun to elude him. The Tour de France bike race is leaving its mark under the sunny skies of France. Five-time Tour de France winner Bernard Hinault, whose over-the-shoulder glance only reminds him that he will always be a marked man. This athlete they call the Badger has put together one of the most talented teams in history. And riding with him is a teammate who this year may not be his willing ally. Greg LeMond has his best chance ever to win the Tour. And here in France, their battle with a race and with each other will be waged over this most alluring and challenging countryside.
ran with 210 of the world's elites, including another Frenchman, Laurent Fignon. He has beaten both Le Mans and Hinault, has returned from an injury, and fashioned his own dream team to help him take his third win. Cycling's larger-than-life superhero has made his presence felt everywhere. They are all three, each of them being tracked down by ambitious men riding bicycles. 2 Frenchmen and 1 American, caught up in the dreams of winning the Tour de France. When it's all over, only one man can leave his mark under the sunny skies of France. It's the people who line the course of the Tour de France in small towns like this one that give the race its character and its soul. Hello again, everyone. I'm John Tesh reporting. On July 27th, the Tour de France bicycle race will make its finish along the Champs-Élysées in Paris, France. Before then, an estimated 20 million or more people will see the race personally along the route. Who wins it? Well, he is the man who covers the entire 2,525 miles in 24 days in the best overall elapsed time. He is the man in the pack who wears the yellow jersey. Day 1 of this year's tour, Bernard Hinault wearing the yellow jersey as the defending champion. At day's end, the jersey would go to the fastest in the race against the clock, and this was Hinault's specialty. The prologue time trial, and for Hinault and riders like Olympic speed skating champion Eric Heiden in his first Tour de France, the 3-mile race against the clock was the first opportunity to make a personal statement. Heiden, competing on America's first full team in the Tour de France, and the speed skater turned cyclist, who will soon enter med school, was on his way to turn in an excellent time. Greg LeMond. In last year's prologue, Hinault's time was 20 seconds faster than Greg's, and it was important for Greg to establish himself here on day 1 in this year's prologue as the team leader. Laurent Fignon, his first moments in the starting house since he won the Tour in '84 and then had to sit out last year with an injury. Although the 3 favorites, LeMond, Hinault, and Fignon, were denied the yellow jersey on day 1, it was Fignon's teammate, Thierry Marie, who had the best time and the jersey. 5 times before, Hinault had won the time trial, but not today. Was this a bad omen? And as the reporters closed in, perhaps the question in Greg LeMond's mind, with only 2 seconds separating he and teammate Hinault, which one would the 10-man La Viclaire team work for? Thierry Marie and his yellow jersey, Fignon's first lieutenant, had done well. Day 2 started with a bang as pre-race festivities got into full swing. It's just not easy working out the bugs right away. It also wasn't a simple task getting Day 2's 55-mile road race up to speed, as communist workers took the opportunity of worldwide press coverage to protest the closing of an automobile plant. No one was hurt, and things returned to normal pretty quickly. But not before yellow jersey Thierry Marie showed he had donned the appropriate color for the day's early excitement. When the racing began in earnest, it was Canadian Alex Steeda riding on the American team who decided the shortest road race in the Tour de France was a chance to become the opportunist. Steeda launched himself out on a solo breakaway. The rest of the riders failed to take him seriously. They let him go, and Steeda began a journey into the record books. He became the first North American cyclist to win the Golden Fleece. Later that day, the team time trial. 21 10-man teams riding together for 34 miles. Yellow jersey Alex Steeda and his American 711 team knew that using proper orchestration would be essential. It was in the team time trial when Laurent Fignon showed off his hot new system. Sponsored by the French System U supermarkets, Fignon's army of techno speed demons were on their way to obliterating their competition. Meanwhile, 7-Eleven was having its problems. With each team's time being added to every individual, 7-Eleven America was trying to protect their yellow jersey and failing. Fignon's band of U-men would go on to generate a win for the system, while La Vie Claire's dismal rhythm left them 2 minutes behind System U. There was heartache for Greg LeMond, and also for 7-Eleven Steeda, who lost his yellow jersey and was almost dropped from the tour for falling so far behind his team. Then last Sunday, Boulder, Colorado native Davis Finney added more history to the tour, becoming the first American to win a tour road race. 134 miles long, and it was Finney on your right at the line.
I'm just in shock. I'm utterly amazed. I can't believe it.
The overall standings after 3 days of 24 look like this, and you can see the importance of having a good team. System U's Marie back in the yellow jersey, Fignon right up there. LeMond and Bernard Hinault nearly 2 minutes behind. At this point, it was crystal clear that Laurent Fignon was back and as powerful as ever. Fignon, with his system, was burning up the Tour de France.
That's exactly what we want them to do. We want them to work. I mean, it's 3 weeks long. It's going to be impossible for them to keep their yellow jerseys that long.
The system, it would seem, is everywhere.
Hello. Ed's book on advertising says the consumer will remember your TV commercial better if it has a memorable visual device. Well, the message we would like you to remember is to be sure to enjoy Bartles and James on Ice this summer. You cannot find a lighter, more refreshing summertime beverage. As for the visual device, Ed says you will probably be able to figure that out all by yourself. So once again, please remember Bartles and James on Ice. And thank you for your continued support.
In May of 1986, we asked hundreds of business people to make a choice and tell us which one sounded better, a typical AT&T long-distance call or a fiber optic call made on U.S. Sprint.
Tremendous clarity. The difference is obvious.
After just one call,
sound and deeper and not any interference at all. And I like the second one a lot better.
3 out of 5 people preferred the fiber optic clarity of U.S. Sprint. It was great.
It's great.
Tremendous difference.
Have you tried it, Sam?
It's definitely clearer.
3 out of 5 preferred U.S. Sprint.
Sounds like I'm calling Mr. Miller right in the other office.
3 out of 5 after just one call.
This is perfect. Interesting. Sprint sounds like it's about 100% better than AT&T.
If I had my druthers, I'd sure as use it over the present system we're using.
So call now. Find out more and save with U.S. Sprint, where every fiber optic call sounds like you're right next door.
CBS asked me to pick out some of my all-time favorite Magnums, and I told them that was a tough call. So they gave me these.
The best of Magnum, Tuesdays, all summer long.
You know, every day in the Tour de France is another long day. Everybody gets up early. There's 23 days, there's 23 different hotels. It's the most transient sporting spectacular in the world. But there's no routine day. As the riders race along in that big pack, there's always something going on. It's certainly never boring.
It's the same in any job, and for the professional cyclist, a cup of coffee and a pleasant chat starts the day nicely. After a drink, well-trained hands remind the rider that this is no ordinary working day, but one that requires special attention. No time to read the mail either. This is an outline of the route ahead, and to those riders who don't know the way, now's the time to learn. Early stars have the chance to sign autographs and enjoy a slice of glory. And there's even time to read about what people think of you. Laurent Fignon grabs a last-minute snack on his way to the start line. It's a long day. And just like in a factory, when the whistle blows, it's time to go to work. But not everybody's so keen. With up to 7 hours pedaling ahead, there's no hurry. The day is young and the road is long. Even Felix Leviton, the organizer, is full of pleasantries for the workers. And for the moment, the lead is dormant and the badger rests among friends. A chance for Hayden to check his wounds of days gone by. Check your brakes, sir. No need to stop for this one. A problem with the cleats on your shoes? Nothing a screwdriver won't fix. Ah, here's a rider with a knee problem. It's not the only problem he's got. You know, these long flat stages can become tedious, and there's no better way than to tune into a little music, join the Navy, or just listen in stereo. And then, if you're lucky along the route, you might just spot Papa and Mama. Marc Gomez, the ex-champion of France, has even had permission from the pack to go ahead and greet his family. What a friendly lot the riders can be at times, even though they don't stop to say hi. One basic rule in the Tour de France is that you must pedal all the way. No one says you have to stay on the road. But never underestimate the dangers of riding in a pack of over 200 riders. Elimination is just an elbow away. The miles tick by, and as the race this day approaches half distance, then lunch is taken. Riders snatch the sacks of food and then, like squirrels, store it for the remaining miles ahead. Bernard Hinault packs the food in his mouth rather than in his pockets. He's making ready with the rest for the metamorphosis that is about to take place. With lunch break over, Laurent Fignon calls on manager Cyril Guimard. And Greg LeMond prepares for the real work, which will soon begin by putting on a hard hat. The open road ahead is now a challenging sight, and the race picks up a tempo that only the best will match. French rivals Fignon and Hinault in the sunglasses speak to each other, but neither will give anything away. If fate strikes now, a bicycle change is the only chance you'll have of getting back to the race, because the pleasantries of the morning are now a thing of the past. The Tour is now in open flight, and the huge crowds in the towns of France pack the streets to catch a glimpse of the peddlers of charm. Every day there are the adventurers like today's Johan van der Velde and Joel Pellier. They search for a stage win or even the yellow jersey. Sometimes the pack's interested, sometimes it's not. Van der Velde reads the route ahead, and the two leaders this day form a partnership from which both can profit. Behind one team, the System U squad are left to work the hardest. After all, it's their man who has the yellow jersey. In front of a huge crowd, Van der Velde wins the stage, and another long day in the office will end, but there's plenty more to come. The field behind have been beaten this time, but with prizes for the first 80 to finish, there's plenty to race for, and the photograph will decide the winners. And what a day for Van der Velde. He gained enough time to take the lead for the first time in his life.
After the race, it's time to think about one thing: preparing for tomorrow's race. Every day, the team mechanics take each and every bike completely apart, clean them up, and then reassemble them once again. While the athletes sleep, these guys work well into the night. and are then up at dawn getting the gear race ready. Since there's a new finish line every day, someone's got to tear this stuff down and then put it back up again. 600 of these crowd control barriers have to be put away. The 500 members of the press have split town, so their area has to be dismantled. 350 of these volunteers, each of them, have the unenviable task of preparing the arenas for 24 days of the world's most grueling bike race. And they have to have it set up by 7 a.m. next day. By the way, the guy who runs the operation is a former colonel in the French Foreign Legion. The Tour de France, live in concerts and always on the road. What's happened to the Badger, Bernard Hinault? Will he and Greg LeMond finally make a move against Laurent Fignon's system? The answer may come along the ocean that carried the allies of days gone by.
Dreams and hopes and promises, and years of happy days. Today's gal, all the best a wine can be.
Outrageousness. Outrageousness. Nothing more than a way to wake people up. Especially yourself. Wasn't that fun?
Daybreak over the shoreline near Cherbourg, France. A crystal clear dawn presiding over peaceful sands. On the beach, a monument reflects the yellow rays of life, marking the site where brave GIs gave their lives to liberate Europe. It's peaceful here now, but 40 years of healing has not erased the memory of what happened in this place called Omaha Beach. Here along these beaches, an American landing point, were waged the bloodiest battles of the D-Day landings. From Omaha Beach, which began as a code name, the Third Army swept down through Brittany and went on to liberate France and the rest of Western Europe. In Colville-sur-Mer, there stands an American cemetery, 9,385 marble crosses. Brave young men who fought for us, each and every one. (1986), day 6 in the Tour de France bike race. The talk today, why haven't Greg LeMond and Bernard Hinault used their skills to put a stop to the System U team? Since the team time trial, Hinault and LeMond have been nearly 2 minutes behind in the overall standings. Behind System U's leader, Laurent Fignon. who looked to have a pre-race blood pressure that was barely measurable. 125 miles ahead, and the riders pull out of a town that has never seen the Tour, the elegant seaside resort of Villers-sur-Mer. Right away, Bernard Hinault lets it be known that he's had enough passive jousting and generates a breakaway off the front of the pack. Like a magnet, he draws a small group of riders along with him. This now is the daring Breton whose take-charge style has won him 5 previous Tours de France. Back in the chase group, and Le Mans too lifts his race tempo, and the entire pace of the race continues to build. No one can afford to let the likes of Hinault or Le Mans get a leg up here on the roads of Normandy. System U, and for once, Laurent Fignon's band of ultramen are not controlling the race, at least not yet. Greg LeMond remains behind with the system. If they make a move on Hinault, he'll go with them. The 11 escape artists have now opened a margin of 1:30, and through the 19th century towns, a Frenchman leads the attack. But his group is a talented one, and includes Ireland's Stephen Roche, who is dangerous enough to keep Hinault on his toes. The chasers, led by Le Mans and System U, are now almost 1:45 behind the leaders, and the blistering pace has opened up the ranks, throwing the swiftest into a scramble in single file.
A check on the watch and a smile on the Breton faces tells the story. The first serious attack in the Tour de France is in progress. And on a day when no one expected more than a routine ride through Normandy, it's the Badger who's come out of his set in fighting mood. There's no finer time to attack than when your enemies don't expect it. And this group of 12 men push the pace up to 35 miles an hour as they speed towards Cherbourg. Greg LeMond follows the moves behind. Why should he chase a teammate? Hinault must be surprised by the way he's gathering time, but Tours have been won by many errors. This is one gift he must accept. He's joined by Stephen Roche, third last year, another favourite who has fled the pack. Free as birds, everyone will help now. Unbelievably, the vigilant System U team have allowed the unthinkable to happen, and now they must group together and try and correct their biggest mistake. Laurent Fignon, expecting a quiet day in the sunshine, is forced into action with his whole team, knowing that if the group ahead stays clear, his hopes of winning the Tour may be gone forever. The System U team chase with no help from the rest because they know that Fignon must chase, using energy that later might cost him the race. Bernard Hinault, the winner of 5 Tours, knows only too well the damage he's causing behind. The wily Breton has come out of his corner at last to show the world that at 31 he can still win the race for a record 6 times. Of all the tactics the riders might have expected, this is one they would never have thought of, because Hinault's record shows he never attacks on the flat. Exasperated, embarrassed, Fignon counters hard. He takes with him a small group, and guess who sat in at the back? Greg LeMond, wearing number 7 and enjoying a free ride on Fignon's account. The Frenchman, it seems, is in a La Vie Claire sandwich. And after an hour of freedom, the leaders begin to sense failure, and behind the relentless formation of the System U team, succeed in ending one of the most epic pursuits across Normandy of a type rarely seen in the Tour. There is still no obvious candidate for Paris. But wait. In a classic tactic, Greg LeMond, Bernard Hinault's teammate, attacks. Has he caught the field off guard? But no, because Yvon Madio, the French champion and teammate of Laurent Fignon, is ready this time. And LeMond knows now that the shocks for this day at least are over. And peace will return to the pack, who will not forget the day the Badger came out to play. And in the end, Johan van der Velde kept the leader's yellow jersey.
The standings following 6 days look a lot like they did before today's race. The difference is now there's more tension than ever before, and at least one rider is talking about it all.
It's been really aggressive the last couple of days. Everybody's nervous for the time trial in the mountains. I think everybody's waiting for something to happen, waiting for it to explode.
And we'll return to John Tesh at the Tour de France in just a moment. But right now, a reminder that still ahead here live from Las Vegas, a scheduled 10-round middleweight bout between former WBC welterweight champion Milton McCrory and hard-hitting middleweight Doug DeWitt. Today's winner may be rewarded with a world title shot in the near future, so this is a key bout for both fighters. Well, we have, as usual, with us our commentator, Gil Clancy, to join us on the boxing coverage today. And, Gil, I think the question about Milton McCrory is the obvious one. He was a champion at 147 pounds. He's moving all the way up to 160. Will there be a difference?
Well, Tim, he was always a devastating puncher as a welterweight. 13 knockouts within the first 3 rounds. Now he's moving up. And the key to this fight, and we're going to find out early because I think there's going to be a lot of big punches landed early, is whether Milton McCrory can move Doug DeWitt with his punch.
But Doug DeWitt realizes, of course, this is a great opportunity for him. Now, he's the middleweight. McCrory's coming up to him. But DeWitt's a realist. He knows that McCrory's the better-known fighter. He's a former world champion. He sees this as an opportunity to prove that he belongs right there in the top 5 middleweights and perhaps as a contender for Marvin Hagler's crown.
Tim, Doug DeWitt has prepared better for this fight than any other fight he's ever fought. He's been out here over a month. He's used to the heat. He's in great condition and very, very confident.
So you can hear the boxing action is going on behind us here on the undercard. We've got an exciting main event coming up, McCrory and DeWitt. Next up, however, we'll find out how American hopeful Greg LeMond is faring when we return to John Tesh and the Tour de France after this message and a word from your local stations.
Hello. Ed and I are pleased to report that among contemporary New York wine cooler consumers, the level of acceptance of Bartles & James continues to be excellent. For a while, though, we were worried that these folks might have gotten hold of a batch which, in addition to being extraordinarily light and refreshing, made their hair turn funny. But we have been assured that this is not the case. So please continue to enjoy the Bartles & James Premium Wine Cooler, whatever your hair or lifestyle. And we thank you for your support.
Bugsy, stay. Make sure your auto insurance is under control when your car's not. Have your Prudential representative give you a fast, free Pro review of your coverage.
Are you covered? I don't know.
You'd know with a Prudential Pro review. The right coverage is no accident.
Oh, my.
Get a Pro review from the Prudential and get a piece of the rock.
Nice boat.
This is CBS.
Who's got a truck that can do a ton of work? Toyota is who. Who's got the most payload of any small truck? Toyota is who. Who's got power? Who's got an electronically fuel-injected engine? And who's got a towing option that can handle 2.5 tons? Toyota is who. A 1986 Toyota 1-ton. And who else? Nobody.
When I was a kid watching TV, we used to sit like this. Didn't matter what was on. It was always... Today, it's a little different. Sure, I'll watch your TV show. But you gotta make it worth my while. You gotta give me a little more.
Better barbecuing starting Monday at noon.
How's the music? It's good?
Cyril Guimard is France's most successful team manager. He's shaped the lives of many of the top riders, and he's chosen his riders from a young age and molded them into champions. Right now, he's in charge of the System U team. And amongst the riders, there are some old faces, like Laurent Fignon, distinctive in his rimless glasses, He can remember the days of 1984 when he won the Tour de France for himself and for Guimard. Greg LeMond's world title and subsequent rise to fame was under the guidance of the man who is now from System U. Guimard also coached Bernard Hinault to 4 victories in the Tour de France. They parted when Fignon came along. 2 chiefs is one too many. Now Guimard and Fignon have developed a system of their own, using a chain of supermarkets for a supermarketeer.
The Magic Men of Team System U. Who are they? Why are they so good? There are a lot of questions here, and frankly, this year's tour appears to be in the throes of... It was the team time trial when we all began noticing something a bit odd about this team. They all use those special black moon wheels, each rider wearing a yellow pointy plastic helmet, except for their leader, Fignon. Already, they had put 7 of their riders in the top 10 standings in the Tour de France bicycle race. And how do you explain a team leader named Cyril, who's already toasting with champagne? Toasting. But does he ever take a sip? Where did they come from? Why are they always riding at the front of the pack? Is this a question that will ever be answered? Who knows the answer?
It seems like they're from another galaxy. They're at the front all the time, protecting their jersey, and they're just superhuman beings.
Why are they so quick to accept free laser muscle treatments at the end of each race? And what of their leader, Fignon? Why is he always running from something? Indeed, they don't even speak our language.
Je pense que pour l'instant on est bien placé, on a très bien travaillé, on a très bien joué pour le classement général et je crois que Laurent est idéalement placé et je crois qu'il va remporter son 3e tour.
Okay, thank you, Messi. Is this a normal team vehicle?
Well, you know, we're supposed to be staying in the same hotel as those guys, but I never see them. And you know, I don't know. You see lights and, you know, things going on late at night. And Fignon, I mean, he's there at dinner, boom, he's gone. I don't know where the guy comes from or where he goes, but he definitely doesn't sleep in a bed.
All over France, they're putting up thousands of these. Young French children are even beginning to look like Fignon. The system and its U-shaped symbol, it's everywhere. Can anyone escape? System U. For the next 2 weeks, take care. Watch the podium. Watch the Tour de France. Watch the skies for...
But back in the real world of the Tour de France, System U carry on defending for Laurent Fignon. To come, though, there's a time trial. Will the system break down?
For all those performance cars that want to keep performing even in wet, sloppy weather, Goodyear introduces the Eagle GT Plus 4. High performance and all-weather performance in one remarkable tire. The Eagle GT Plus 4. The performance won't be canceled by the weather. You either have Goodyear Eagles or you need them.
I'm no car salesman, and you're no dummy.
So I have no chance of selling you a Renault in 30 seconds. But I must tell you, I think this Renault is too good a car for you not to consider. Yes, you can do the expected and buy another one of whatever it is you're driving, or you can put yourself in a Renault. Probably not the first car you'd think of, but it just might be the smartest.
You know, when people drop by my apartment, they say, well, this is the apartment. You can guess what they say. They say, don't you have a couch? Don't you have a dining room set? I do, however, have Maxwell House instant coffee. Seems to reassure most folks that I'm a reasonably tasteful guy. And after 1 or 2 cups, they forget they're sitting on lawn furniture. But when they get up, the backs of their thighs look like Belgian waffles.
In 2 weeks, those magnificent men and their amazing machines. IROC race number 3 and the Talladega 500 on CBS Sports.
This has always been the race about time. Over a span of many years, it's always been a race against the clock. So let's turn the clock back and take a look at history. For 83 years, many things have remained unchanged. The backdrop of the beautiful French countryside, for example. The struggle of racing each day and every day. And the glory of the victory.
À bicyclette, quand on approchait la rivière, on déposait.
For 83 years too, men have raced bicycles around the entire French countryside. They may have slowed down occasionally for a passing train, and even done a little bit of walking. But only one thing has cancelled the Tour. 2 world wars on French soil also had the Tour as a casualty, but racing began again as soon as the fighting was over. Today, the Arc de Triomphe signals the end of the race around France, where the final yellow jersey is awarded. Yellow? Because that used to be the colour of the sponsoring newspaper. With heavy bicycles, no multiple gears, and with spare tyres